and welcome to Myth Monsters. My name's Erin, and I'll be your host for these little snack bite-sized podcasts on folklore and mythical monsters from around the world. These podcasts focus on the actual cryptids, folklore and mythic monsters from global mythology, rather than focusing on the full stories of heroes and their big adventures. I'll also be dropping in some references that they have to recent culture, and we can see these represented in modern day content so that you can learn more and get as obsessed as I am about these absolute legends of the mythological world. Summer is in full swing over here in the UK, with gorgeous summery weather, so much so that I've actually done the cringiest British thing I could do, and I bought an AC unit for my house for the 2 days of the year that it's unbearable. But it's awful. However, I am truly the coolest cucumber. I'm sitting here playing video games all day, and now the whole summer is going to be glorious. Lovely. It is loud though. I really feel it when it's off. Anyway, moving away from the horrendous heat, we're moving over to East Asia for a monster from technically 4 different mythologies, which is a first and super exciting. I can hear the Fantastic Beasts fan screams because we are looking at the fabulous, majestic Qilin. Now, before I get started, you might be wondering why there are 2 spellings of this and why I've put in 2 different names in the title this week. This is because the same monster is known under 2 names, and technically 3, but these are the most common ones, and both of them are equally popular. And this is because of where they are from. They are from different countries, and therefore they are spelled differently. I'll get more into it later within our etymology, but just in case you were wondering, yes, we are talking about the same monster. They are exactly the same. We are not doing 2 in this episode. So, the Qilin. They are usually described as having the body of a horse or deer, with a shimmering, scaly coat like a fish or a dragon, a lion's tail and mane, cloven hooves like a cow, and a face like a dragon, with long whiskers and beards. They are often mistaken and called unicorns because they are sometimes found with a singular horn, but sometimes they can also have majestic antlers like stags. They are said to be bigger than normal horses if we're taking the body visually into account, and are said to be able to get to around 9 feet tall, so they are quite big. They are usually surrounded by a spiritual fire or glow of some kind, especially around their manes and their legs, to represent their ethereal nature. Qilins are known for their peaceful nature though, and they can drift through the world at super speed, floating, because they don't even want to harm a blade of grass as they gallop. They're known as being very gentle and benevolent creatures, with a kind heart towards humans and any other living animals or plant life. They are known as being incredibly wise and just, with a really strong sense of justice, and are able to sense good and evil in a person. Whilst they are not known to speak to humans directly, they can communicate through very clear body language and expression rather than speaking itself. It's almost like a telepathy, but it is very body language and facial expression stressed. The Qilin's main job though is being elusive, and that is because they only appear when either a great peace has been achieved or to mark the birth of a very enlightened leader or sage, but they can also turn up just before their death to kind of announce it as well. So they were extremely rare to see, especially in ancient Asia, where war was rife within the countries in the region. Because of this, their divine judgment was extremely important and looked for, and they would bow to the person they deemed worthy, showing the people around them the honour of that person's character. They would actively shun evil people and would only attack in the last instance, but if they did, it would be with absolutely unmatched ferocity. They are also immortal, and because of this are seen as an omen of enduring peace and prosperity in the realm. They are also able to ward off evil and malicious spirits because their purity is so strong, and they can purify regions and restore balance too, which can involve healing people, which is super handy. Now, we don't know where the Qilin comes from or where they live when they're not on our earthly realm, but the belief is that they are made from starlight, a gift straight from the heavens to celebrate peace amongst all men. Because of this, we don't know what they eat or how they reproduce, but we do know that they can be both male and female, so the assumption is that they can have babies like any other mammal, I guess. Their immortality is also almost considered invulnerability, as these monsters are very often considered dragons, although I hasten to add they are not technically dragons. Their scales actually shield them from most damage, and there have been no records of the death of a Qilin within folklore. However, there have been records of injury, and I will get into that later. Now, moving on to etymology. Unfortunately, there isn't a direct translation into English, but I can tell you some cool things about the Qilin as a word. Qi and Lin are actually two separate words, brought together to fully represent this monster, and they separately represent the male, Qi, and the female, Lin, versions of this monster, which is very cool. But in Chinese, this word directly relates to this monster. It's not translatable into anything else, but it is often mistranslated into English as unicorn, which is fundamentally incorrect. It is not a unicorn, but they are very often very, very well attached. In Korea, the Qilin are actually called the Kirin, and Kirin with a K, but the term Kirin is actually their word for giraffe, which is the same in Japan. It's Kirin with a K there too. And I'm sure you imagine why the giraffe, but I'll go into that a bit deeper later. Now, for their history, they have been around for a very long time, and I mean a very, very long time, since the 11th century BC, so around 1,000 years before the year 0, when they were noted in a poem called Lin Zi, or Feet of the Lin. In this poem, it talks about Lin, a female Qilin, being captured and identified by a great sage, and his name was Confucius. It does sound like confused, I give you that. Remember that name though, he's quite important. There are a couple of stories though about Qilin. The most famous though is actually around our great sage. He is a very famous man, like in reality, he actually coined the saying, "Do not do unto others what you do not want done to yourself." That was actually quite hard to read. And his teachings still live on in the teachings of Confucianism, which is practiced today still. He lived in around 550 BC, and was said that when he was born, a Qilin arrived on Earth to celebrate the birth of a great sage. He went on to do great things, encouraging music, art, politics and poetry throughout the Chinese cultural space. When the same Qilin was injured years later, it foretold of his death, which then very quickly happened. The idea of being associated to a Qilin is a really big thing within the Chinese politics and social space, and prior to that, their monarchy too. Another famous story is about Zheng He from the Ming dynasty, or from around 1368 to 1644 AD. He is still regarded as the greatest admiral in China's history, so he is also a very important figure. He took a trip to East Africa, mostly Somalia, and picked up a few exotic animals to take home, including, very importantly, a giraffe, and presented them to the emperor, who genuinely believed, after taking a look at a giraffe, that they were Qilin, and he was being shown to be a great leader. This had a huge lasting effect, and the word Qilin is still used for the Korean and Japanese languages when talking about the Qilin, but it's also their word for giraffe. And it's important to note that their versions of this monster came after the Chinese. It is originally a Chinese myth monster that spread. Legends also tell that the Qilin were featured in the legendary garden of the Yellow Emperor and Emperor Yao, who were both, important note here, mythical emperors. It was believed that they were so brilliant at ruling that they were blessed with their own Qilins that lived in their beautiful palace gardens, so as no one would question their great leadership. Lastly, there's another mythology that also has a Qilin, and that is the Thai. In Thailand, the Qilin is known as the Qilin and is a member of their mythical animal pantheon known as the Himapant. These again were brought across from China, but represent the elemental magical forces, and so is a bit different in looks, as they very literally, within their appearance, personify the elements themselves. This Qilin is also mentioned within an epic poem called Fra Alfai Mani, where there is a monster ridden by the main character, who is described very similarly to a Qilin, but called Ma Ning Mankorn, or Sailor Knight Dragon Horse. And he was described as having diamond fangs, Silenite scales, and black sequins all over his body. I don't know how they got the sequins, I'll be honest. I thought sequins were plastic, but we'll give it to him. The legend of the Qilin goes on today in the Hakka people of China, where at Chinese New Year or weddings, they perform Qilin dances. These are very similar to the lion and dragon dances that we know of, especially in the West, but the Qilin dance tells the story of a Qilin leaving its lair and looking for food. It then finds a vegetable, spits it out alongside a jade book, and then it returns to its lair again. The costume is beautiful and believed to mimic cats and symbolises good fortune, prosperity and harmony. On the other side of the East China Sea in Japan, they have the Kirin Brewery Company keeping the myth alive. They've been around since 1888, and the Kirin is the logo as well as the name for their beautiful looking lager, I must say. I'm a big beer lady and that it's my joy. They've said that the Kirin is the symbol of their quote-unquote unwavering commitment to uncompromising quality and to bring joy to our customers' lives. I have had Kirin beer at some point in the past and distinctly remember it, but I cannot say I remember what it tastes like, unfortunately. But if you have it near you, please go give it a try and appreciate the mystical creature bringing it to you. Keep that myth alive. Now, time to bust this one open. Of course, what we believe this monster might be, funnily enough, is the giraffe from that wonderful story earlier. When the giraffes and other exotic creatures from Africa were brought over to China and the rest of Asia, I imagine they did believe that these were their long-lost mythical monsters, and you can kind of see why, with their spotty coats, long necks and hooved feet. We do also have two creatures worth mentioning as counterparts, and I bet you've guessed them already, it's the unicorn and the dragon. I've covered both of these in other episodes if you want to know more, but here's the basic rundown. Unicorns are a Scottish mythical monster, mostly horse but with a singular horn on their head, with many superpowers, including healing and bowing to worthy people, which does make it an easy comparison and a very common one too with the Qilin. Dragons, on the other hand, are from all over the world, but especially Asian dragons could most certainly be related. With their wise nature and connection to Chinese royalty and the stars, it all makes sense. These creatures float through the air in a more serpentine way than our lizard drakes over here in Europe, and they generally avoid people when they have to. So I can definitely see the comparison to Qilins. I can see why people get mixed up as well. But dragons are awesome, unicorns are awesome. I've covered them both in their own separate episodes, especially the dragons. We did a big Halloween special on them last year, so if you want to check out that for more info, please feel free. Now let's move on to modern media. We actually have a bit on these this week, so if you're a bit of a Potterhead and you know them already, woohoo! But there are a whole load of other media that both the Kirin and the Qilin have starred in. For art, have a look at architecture this week, because they are not often used in traditional paintings, but you can see them in loads of Chinese, Japanese, Thai and Korean architecture. I'd really recommend looking at them, and I'd really recommend looking at independent and more modern art depictions of them too, because what people have made is truly beautiful and reflects these wonderful and really quite unique monsters. In movies, we have Princess Mononoke, 47 Ronin, Shang-Chi and the Golden Rings, Buddha's Palm, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, Mysterious Ancient Beasts, The Great Yokai War, and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. For TV, we have Beyblade, Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, Super Sentai, BTX, Digimon Data Squad, One Piece, Naruto, Pet Shop of Horrors, and My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. In video games, we have ones such as Arcana Heart, Bunny Must Die, Final Fantasy 11, 12 and 14, Puzzle and Dragons, Age of Mythology, World of Warcraft, Pokemon, Guild Wars, Monster Sanctuary, Steel Assault, Endless Nightmare, Hangzhou, Mystic Riders, Golden Sun, Heroes of Might and Magic, Genshin Impact, Bloody Spell, Dynasty Warriors, Fire Emblem, Yokai Watch, Terra Battle, Yakuza 3, Mystical Fighter, Monster Hunter, Gaia Crusaders, Dragalia Lost, Ark Knights, and Arabian Magic. My book recommendation this week is for The Japanese Myths, a guide to gods, heroes and spirits by Joshua Friedman, The Korean Myths, a guide to the gods, heroes and legends by Heinz Insu Fenkel, and The Chinese Myths, a guide to the gods and legends by Tao Tao Lu within the Thames and Hudson Myth series. For a fantastic look at all of these mythologies, this series is really good for anyone getting anything from these bigger mythology spaces. I really recommend them. They're hardback, they're gorgeous, and there's a whole massive collection of the biggest mythologies in the world. For my younger audience and their parents, have a look at East Asian Folktales, Myths and Legends by Eva Wong Nava for a smaller handful of monster tales from this region. But again, she does a worldwide series that I really recommend for our younger listeners. Again, it's across the world, the bigger mythologies. Really recommend it, and they've got some beautiful illustrations in there for your little ones. But now it's time for Do I Think They Existed? This one is tricky, because they are really rare to spot. Mainly because we've been lacking in a great leader category for a very long time, especially over here in the UK, but I'm not looking at any country specifically. Cough cough. Either way, do I think a unicorn/dragon creature is going to come down from the heavens when a great leader or sage is born? No. I think we might be beyond that point of grace as well as a species. If anything, the wise Qilin would take one look at the state of our world now and leave that giant hole in the ozone layer, never to return, thinking if there are any clever humans left, they're probably going to die soon anyway. Not to fearmonger, I'm only joking, but realistically, no, I do not believe Qilins are going to come and save us. However, I do like the idea of them very much. I love the connection to human intelligence, and that you are blessed by them if you are that good a person. If it was just based on how wonderful or how kind or how generous you were, we'd have Qilins in the bucket loads. Maybe we're just not that great and not that clever, which is kind of sad. Maybe one day we'll really spot one, and that's our omen that something good is coming in the next 30 years or so, whilst that person grows up. I don't know, call me a cynic, but I have hope for us, and I hope the Qilin to return one day, and I hope it's soon. But what do you think? Did the Qilin and the Kirin roam amongst East Asia? Let me know on social media, I would love to know what you think about this one. What a fabulous creature, and so nice to cover a wider chunk of countries in one continent with one monster. Definitely a new one for us this week, and I'm really glad we finally got to cover it. This monster was a recommendation from J Rams on Spotify. Thank you so much for your recommendation. I really enjoyed this one and I hope you did too. Thank you so much. Keep sending them in. Next time, we are heading over to the Nordic Isles, and I will stress mostly Iceland, for a softer spirit for once. Follow this spooky entity in your dreams for a potentially bad ending, but at least they're nice on the way. Join us next time for the haunting Fulja from Norse mythology. Now, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating on the service you are listening on. I've got loads of social media for any questions or suggestions on what monsters to cover next, and I'd really love to hear from you. The social media handles for TikTok, YouTube and Instagram are Myth Monsters Podcast, and the Twitter is Myth Monsters Pod. I'm also on Blue Sky under Myth Monsters, but all of our content can be found at mythmonsters.co.uk, and you can find us on Good Pods, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon if you want to help me fund the podcast too. Come join the fun though. Share this with your pals. They might love me as much as you do. But for now, stay spooky. And I'll see you later, babes.